So today I was making my first recipe out of the Unofficial Harry Potter Cookbook, making bourbon glazed pork loin with peaches. You can see the recipe on the screen here. So I started with the marinade, mixing a bunch of ingredients, brown sugar, bourbon, using 4 roses bourbon, some soy sauce, and a whole lot of other things, mustard, Worcestershire sauce, ground ginger, hot sauce, and garlic. Um, this recipe had a lot of ingredients, and if you've ever looked at the cookbook, a lot of the recipes are a little complicated. But I got this as a gift, and I was really excited to try out some of the recipes, so I just picked one that looked good to me. I will say that I think having a food processor would have been a little easier than using a blender, but I think this part turned out okay. Some of the later parts, as you might notice, don't turn out exactly like I was hoping. But overall, the recipe was pretty good. Not sure I would make it a second time though. So at this point, I'm just finishing up the marinade. I'm almost done. We're gonna marinate the pork with the peaches for 24 hours overnight. The recipe calls to put it in a large resealable bag, which I did not have access to. So as you'll see later, I tried to wrap it all in saran wrap and that didn't work. So I ended up putting it in a pan and just covering it with saran wrap, which I think worked okay, but I'm worried it might not have soaked in all the flavors perfectly. Some of the peaches were a lot more saturated than others. At this point, I'm just slicing up the peaches and pulling out the pit. I've never actually had fresh peaches before, I don't think. I've only ever had canned peaches before this point, so this was kind of fun. A lot easier to cut than I thought. I always thought peaches were going to be like a lot harder, but as you can see, I was struggling with the pit on this last one. Just finishing quartering them, and then I got a pork loin that was a bit too big for what I needed. So right here, I just start cutting it. I wasn't sure if I should cut it down the middle, like long ways or short ways, so I ended up going long ways. Not sure if this is the best way to cut it. Comment down below if I should have cut it the other way or if you know any other food tips that I should be doing. And then I just toss it in with the peaches and we start to marinate. Here's all that saran wrap I was talking about. I cut it out of the video, but it it was a little bit of a mess, me trying to wrap this whole thing. But here we go, just pouring in the marinade, and that is when I just refrigerate it for 24 hours. At this point, the pork had been marinated for 24 hours and it was time to start baking. The recipe called to use a baking pan with a rack, which of course I also didn't have. So I decided to try and make a little rack using aluminum foil, just balling it up, making little supports to hold the pork up. Not exactly sure why I couldn't just put the pork into the pan like normal. But yeah, it seemed to work okay. So if you don't have a baking rack, then I think this would work. And it is time to go into the oven. I baked it for 40 minutes at 325 degrees. And while that was going, I put all the peaches and the marinade into a pot to cook up and turn into a glaze later after the pork had been cooked. So the 40 minutes has gone by and I'm checking my pork here, trying to make sure that it's cooked all the way through using our meat thermometer. I think my pork is too big because it did not cook all the way through and I had to end up cooking it for about 30 minutes longer. But after it was done, I let it rest for 15 minutes, and while that was resting, I started the glaze and cooking the peaches. I was really worried about the peaches sitting with the raw pork juice overnight, so I think I might have cooked this a bit too long. As you'll see here, I am cooking these peaches on medium heat for a little while, just trying to make sure all that raw pork is cooked off of it. You can see the bubbling from the liquid below and the peaches browning and cooking through. So this is my first recipe from the Unofficial Harry Potter Cookbook. I had a lot of fun doing it. It turned out okay. I'd probably give it a 6.5 out of 10. But I think a lot of that has to do with my own cooking ability, and so next time I'm sure I could do it better. But this is the last step before we move on to slicing up the pork and plating. As you can see here, the ends of the pork are a bit dry and tough, but as I get to the middle, it's really tender and juicy. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the cook on this pork. This has been a really fun first video. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a comment below if you have any kitchen tips that you think I should know. Also, let me know if you think I should keep cooking in the Unofficial Harry Potter Cookbook, or if you have some other recipes you think I should try out. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.